Hi, everybody. It is just about 2 months, a little over 2 months to my birthday party on August 23rd. And I know I had mentioned, come dressed as your favorite character or, Tom Robbins. And I've been having a really hard time picking out which one. Though in this book I'm going to talk about today would probably be one of the biggest choices that I might make. So, but I'm still not sure. But in general, um, just come in the spirit of Tom Robbins. And after reading all of his books for the third or fourth time, and particularly all in a row, I'm beginning to, you know, the philosophy of Tom Robbins is to not take um, yourself or anything too seriously, and this party will definitely be in that vein of enjoying ourselves and you know uh, not taking ourselves too seriously, particularly when it comes to karaoke, because that is not a serious thing for me. All right, so the book I'm going to talk about today is his second to last fiction book. Um, it was published in 2000, so almost 24 years ago. And it's set in 1998. So the millennium is coming, and that figures key in here with some of this idea of millennial prophecies. It's called Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates, and that's actually a quote from Rimbaud. I believe I'm saying that uh, correctly, but I may not be. Um, but comes in at 415 pages, so it's one of his larger books, and it is again, just don't if you don't take it too seriously, you would you're not likely to be offended by it. But again, as with all of Tom Robbins' books, there are lots of really offensive things that are happening in it, which is just you can't get away from that. So this it has been written that this is his first male protagonist, Switters, who is an ex-CIA agent. Sorry, I got my little Dolly dog down here demanding attention. Um, Switters is a CIA agent who doesn't take the CIA very seriously, or the government for that matter, or any kinds of things. So I was thinking a little bit about him today, and sort of reminds me of like Christopher Hitchens in a way, something not so um just atheist, not what very anyway, if you're familiar with Christopher Hitchens, that's kind of how Sweaters is. He's very contradictory. But anyway, so we have lots of thank you, Dolly. Lots of characters in this one, again, being one of his bigger books. It takes places in multiple places, from Seattle. Sorry about that. From Seattle to Peru to the Syrian desert and to the Vatican City. And there are some reminiscences of Pat Pong, which actually foreshadows the next and final book. There's also a CIA agent, and in the next book that's also in this book. Um, so he's a CIA agent who really doesn't believe the government, that the government is actually corrupt. There are nuns who are not actually nuns. He has his stepsister, his mother's husband's daughter named Susie, who he's infatuated with, and that is a very big age gap there. Maestra is his grandmother. Sailor Boy is the parrot in the pyramid cage, and here pyramid power comes in. And if you remember back in uh, Still Life with Woodpecker, that was a lot about pyramid power and pyramid shape, and so a little bit of that comes back with Sailor Boy. We have Bobby Case, which is a CIA agent, friend of Switter's. We have the Pacomian nuns. One of them is named Domino. And also interestingly in this book is that features prominently is one of Matisse's blue nudes. And I was so privileged to see them in St. Louis this spring to see Matisse's blue nudes. And that blue nude figures prominently in this book. And there's a ton of other people in this. Okay. Um, the best thing about Fierce Invalids, and in general, I think sort of the influence on me of Tom Robbins is this importance of language and the use of precise language. You probably can't tell that from some of these videos that I'm doing, but he really believes that the language is. I'm going to read some quotes to you later that I think are really important. He has 1.5 pages on the use of quotation marks, and he calls them earrings and what they do to words and why we put them on. So 1.5 pages about that. Um, Very early on, Switters becomes afflicted, and so we become. A lot of the book is about taboos, like his relationship with, or his intended relationship with his stepsister, Susie, which is a taboo, um, and then him being subject to a taboo, so that's kind of a theme in there. Um, and so Switters is a character who, if he is given, two choices, he'll always find a third, which I think is pretty funny. So, he ends up in the Syrian desert, and there's an oasis there, and it says, if you're need help, ring once. If you're trying to if trying to sell something, ring twice or something like that. So he rings 3 times to see what happens. So that kind of thing. So part of this millennial kind of idea, there is this the prophecy of Fatima or Fatima. I'm not really sure how to say it. And from Portugal. There's also he meets someone who's a prophet in Peru and talking about prophecies. And so it's again just a romp, if we could say, from one place to the other. Some of the quotes, um, again, in the front are just, um, startlingly evocative, has more dramatic reversals than Othello. A picaresque masterpiece. Yeah, so very much that, like, things that possibly can't happen but happens. But really super fun to read. And again, of course, there's all this philosophy in there. And one of it is about this idea of curiosity, and that curiosity is sort of essential. Um, like, and Switter does a lot of things because he just wants to know what's going to happen. And he's curious to see what will happen. And that is a really kind of an essential part of being human and alive, is being curious. And so I really like that about this book. There's a lot that's weird about this book as Tom Robbins, but here are the quotes that I want to read to you, and then I'll be done. And then the last book, hopefully that'll come this week too, because that's a real short one, and I'm done with that one. So one of the quotes, page 151, about language. Intelligent speech is under pressure in our fair land and needs all the support it can get. And so he's writing this in the late 90s, and I'm pretty sure that that is just a quote I could put, my signature line, my syllabus, like everywhere, like thoughtful, intelligent speech. I'd add thoughtful to that too. Um, this is really interesting. He's sort of paraphrasing Freud a little bit later about wit is the denial of suffering. And he said, the witty and playful among us don't deny suffering exists, but they deny suffering power over their lives. A comic sensibility is essential to outmaneuver the ubiquitous exploitation and to savor life in a society that requires us to take symbols, institutions, and consumption very, very seriously. So, again, this is sort of his overarching philosophy in almost all the books, right? Is being playful and curious and joyful as a way to be alive and survive in the kinds of uh, world we live in. Um, he has a couple funny quotes about wine, which I have to share with you because, most people know that I like wine. So, later on in the book, he would like to have wine for breakfast, or he asks for wine, and Domino says, "Well, you haven't eaten your breakfast yet." And he responds, "The wine doesn't know that. Wine only recognizes two temporal states: fermentation time and party time." Love that one. And then he goes on to say, "Now, don't get the idea that I'm a boozer. Setting out to get deliberately drunk is pathological. I like to drink just enough to change the temperature in the brain room." And then when he wants to rearrange the temperature in the brain room, he'll choose alternative substances. So, and then there's this quote on page 370, and Tom Robbins does this a lot about the two kinds of people quotes, right? There's two kinds of people, one that believes there's two kinds of people and one that doesn't. That was from, I can't remember what book that was from. Um, so this is around where he's talking about curiosity. Um, and hopefully I can find it. Yeah, this is about curiosity and two kinds of people. So he talked about when he went to Russia with a marching band, and how many Russians just sort of turned their Switters, the character, and they just went around their business. They just turned their backs on the spectacle. Um, and he was questioning their curiosity. Wouldn't you just be at least a bit, even if you were anti-American, wouldn't you be at least curious a little bit about this crazy marching band? Um, and so he came to recognize that there were two kinds of people: those that were curious about the world, and those whose shallow attentions were pretty much limited to those things that pertain to their personal well-being. He concluded further that curiosity might have to be added to the list of traits. Humor, imagination, eroticism, spirituality, rebelliousness, and aesthetics that, according to his grandmother, separated full-fledged humans from the less evolved. So, and then he just goes on to talk about curiosity. He said the obsessive questing of scientists and artists, or even to all but the squealy speculations of those who could barely wait to see what was going to happen next. So that's sort of like his philosophy in here. And then it also comes down to this millennial prophecy of what's going to happen. And so there's this really interesting conversation towards the end of the book about, the direction of the new millennium will not come from any particular religious institution, but might come from somewhere else. But it's about joy. And so the nuns are discussing this and really thinking about, I mean, isn't that just sort of, the being of it all, just joy? Like, if we get down to it, wouldn't Jesus want us to be joyous and lighthearted and um, helpful and kind and stuff? So really interesting book. It's a lot of words. because Switters loves words, and one of the things he uses often is to say, like when he goes to South America and other places, he says the place is too goddamn vivid, and I would say the book is pretty vivid as well. So if you're looking for a challenge, and want to know what Switter's affliction is and the taboo he can't break, um, which is also interesting, and the choices he makes and what happens to him at the end. I encourage you to read it and just read it with a light heart and not take it too seriously. See you next time. Bye. Bye.